listening to the DeCesare Group Podcast. Welcome back. I'm your host, Jim DeCesare, and I'm glad you're here. I hope your new year is off to a fantastic start, and I'm excited to bring you this week's episode of the DeCesare Group Podcast. My guest this week is Dr. Martha Sales. She's Dean of Students and Vice President of Student Experience at Western Kentucky University. It would be hard to overstate the impact she has made on WKU. With her 27 years of grant writing experience, Dr. Sales has been awarded $20+ million for student success. Aside from her administrative roles, she also teaches and facilitates courses and trains students and her colleagues in her various areas of expertise. A native of Franklin, Kentucky, Dr. Sales overcame the barrier of being a low-income and first-generation student herself and went on to obtain the following degrees from WKU: a doctorate in higher education leadership, an educational specialist in student affairs, a Master of Arts in counseling, marriage, and family, a Bachelor of Science in social work with a minor in African American studies, and a Women's Studies graduate certificate from Western Kentucky University. That's a lot of education. And she has lots of interesting insights, especially on generations in the workforce and what we can learn from those patterns. Here's my conversation with Dr. Martha Sales. Dr. Sales, welcome to the DeCesare Group Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's glad to have you here, and I know you got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about, but I want to get started. I always like to start at the beginning.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your background, and did you ever think in your lifetime you'd be the vice president at WKU? A guidance counselor once told you weren't fit for college.
No,
And
you're exactly right.
Look at you now.
Look at me now. Look at me now. But a little bit of my background, I often tell people, Jim, wherever I go, I'm just a girl from Franklin.
Yeah.
And I tell them the real Franklin, the 42134. And so I was born. I was just sharing with you. I have 3 older brothers. 2 are deceased. And my mom and dad, neither one of them went to college. Actually, my dad was higher education wasn't even in his thought process because he only had an 8th grade degree, 8th grade education, I should say, and then my mom only a 10th grade. But I often tell people they are still the wisest people I have ever known.
It's amazing, isn't it? That our parents, because I'm first generation too, and my mother, she graduated high school but never went to college. She went to nursing school, became an LPN, raised 2 boys by herself, but man, she was smart.
Yes, yes, yes,
Street
sir.
smart, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The common sense and
Yeah.
just that wisdom, and just the wisdom to teach people and just to be kind, So as many people I have shared with this as well, my guidance counselor did. They told me that I needed to get a job in a factory like my parents and don't worry about higher education, but that wasn't the plan for my parents. I told my mom about that, and she asked me, I remember sitting at the dinner table, do you want to go to college? And I said, yes, Mom, I do. And she said, well, we can make that happen.
That's awesome.
And so she contacted a couple of people in our church, Mr. and Mrs. Milliken, both educators. They were the smartest, educated people my parents knew, and they assisted me and prepared me for college. And so basically from an educational standpoint, that's how I got to Western Kentucky University.
That's awesome. You touched on something about them having common sense. Seems like we're missing a lot of that these days.
Yes, sir. I often hear it say common sense is not as common anymore.
It's not. And, because I teach in the fall at Western and teach intro to business to aspiring business students. And, we have that conversation, Unfortunately, the United States is one of the last on the list almost of developed countries when it comes to critical thinking and problem-solving skills. And, having that ability to get out there and figure it out for yourself like our parents did, that's kind of a lost art almost.
That's so true.
So we got to figure out how to make that a reality again. It's up to us.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is up to our generation, as we're going to talk about a little bit more today. But yeah, I think that is. And to answer your second question in reference to my role as vice president at Western Kentucky University, no, I had no idea that I would be in this seat for such a time as this.
Yeah, that's awesome. And such a great accomplishment too. And at the best university in Kentucky.
Yeah, in the world.
In the world. Yeah, okay. We'll go world. Sorry, Harvard. Yale. Oxford, you're out.
Sorry.
So what does a day look like for you at WKU? I mean, you've got a lot of different hats you're wearing. So how do you juggle all that?
Well, I'm so appreciative of the hats that I juggle. I never, ever get bored.
Right.
Let me share that. And I appreciate all the busy work that I have to do because it keeps me from being a busybody.
Yeah.
From a day-to-day, it could consist of assisting students. A lot of individuals don't realize how tough it is being a college student. They face so many different challenges that you and I didn't have to face.
Right.
Sometimes they are pushed to make choices that you and I didn't have to, to make. And so usually my day consists of reading reports on student needs, what they have gone through either the night before or a couple days before, spending time reaching out to them, providing guidance or assistance. It could be just character talk. It could be care talk and triaging to make sure they get in the right place in front of the right people. Some of it is financial. Some of it is academic. But just day to day, I spend most of my day advocating for our students, educating them about the system, and then empowering them to operate successfully in the system. That is in my role of Dean of Students.
And especially with a lot of freshman student, they come in and it's the first time they've ever been away from the house, from their home. They're trying to figure it out. They get a week to get ready. And, and I'll say this, and you can chime in if you want. I think there are a lot of students that come to college that aren't prepared with just some essential skills.
Yes.
And they have to navigate that. And that's a lot of pressure on them to do that, especially in the first 6 weeks of school.
Yes, I totally agree. And it's just, I tell students as well as faculty and staff and even parents that really every year is a freshman year.
Yeah.
Because it's transition, what you feel comfortable with, maybe your freshman year that you have succeeded, and now you're a sophomore, but then you almost have to start all over with different classes, different instructors, different styles, just different parts of life. And so, many students come in and they're not prepared, as we talked about, from even the transition, but also just prepared to navigate the system called higher education. And then every year, if you think about that, changes. It does. It changes. So every year is a freshman year.
But it gets a little better
each year. It gets better. It does. It gets better.
So, you have that unique ability to inspire students and parents. How do you maintain such a positive outlook when things aren't going so great? For example, the dorm problem.
Yes.
Yes. How do you deal with all that and stay positive? Because anybody can be a negative Nelly, right?
Yes, sir.
You got to put a positive spin on things to keep attitudes in the right direction, because attitudes are contagious.
Yes.
And bad ones can infect the whole room pretty quick.
I totally agree. And attitude also reflects leadership. As you said, you don't want to be around people who are negative. And so from the day-to-day operations, what I try to do is think about it could always be worse.
Yeah.
Even though we are handed sometimes things that are not in our control, I think, but it could be worse.
It could be a lot worse.
Yes. And so you look at the problem that's handed to you, and as opposed to just sitting on it, you have to create a plan to make it better. And I also believe with each obstacle provides opportunity for better.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you're not challenged, you don't know how strong you can be. And if you're not challenged, you don't know how weak you are in some areas. So I just keep that in mind. And at the end of the day, what we should do for the students. And if we can help a student, that is our job. Yeah. Can't help all of them, can't save all of them. But every day when I go home, if I've helped one, I've done my job.
I like old classic war movies, and there's one. It's a comedy with Cary Grant and I can't think of the other guy's name that was in it. It's called Operation Petticoat.
Okay.
And there's a great line in that movie. It says, in chaos, there's opportunity.
Yes.
And I always kind of think about that when things are not going my way. What's the opportunity here?
Yes.
Or the silver lining,
Yes. Yeah. And it strengthens you.
Yeah.
No one really wants to go to the gym and start out with heavy weights. You've got to build that endurance up to that. But if you keep going, if you keep showing up, if you keep trying, if you keep adding weight, and sometimes that's what obstacles do. They add weight to you to build your character.
Yeah. Success is built on a mountain of failures.
Yes. So true. Yes.
So true. So one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here is because a friend of mine saw you do a presentation about generations in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And I think we're at a very unique period of time in this world where we have people that I think span like 8 different generations that could be in the same workplace.
In the same workplace.
So talk about that a little bit.
So when I was working on my dissertation, as many doc students do, we really don't know what our subject matter wants to be, what we want it to be. We oftentimes think that we have this bright idea and nobody else has thought about it. And then that the more and more research you do, you realize, well, yeah, someone else has thought about it.
Yeah, the best ideas I ever had, I stole.
Yes. And so you just need to build on that research.
Yeah.
And so I remember one of my dissertation committee members, Dr. Tony Norman, I thought I wanted to go in one direction. He was like, well, Martha, your dissertation should be a bridge to where you are now, and it should help you cross over to where you want to be, but it also should be sustaining. So it should never go out of style. And so we begin to look at generations, and that's something that will never really go out of style because every, 8 to 10 years, there's a new generation depending on the definition you use for generational differences. And so I just decided to look at generational differences in the workplace because at the time I was supervising a multi-generation workforce within the TRIO programs. I had baby boomers all the way down at that time to Gen Ys. And so just spending time looking at their differences, what they appreciated, what they disliked. And so that was just opportunity. So that's why I started researching and looking into generational differences.
Yeah. So, talking about baby boomers, there's also the greatest generation before them. So like if you were working in a group where the late great Dr. Lee Robertson was involved, you could add that aspect to it too. And of course that man was a mountain of wisdom.
A legend, yes.
Yeah,
a
the goat.
Traditionalist. Yes, he was.
I know that the newest generation I think is called the Alpha generation.
Yes.
And then you have
Gen Z.
The millennials, Gen
X,
Gen,
then baby boomers,
then
traditionalist,
yes,
or the silent generation.
Yeah. And so what are some of the common denominators between those generations that you've seen?
In my research and even today, I see that, and this goes back to that thing that we talked about with our parents and just the common sense and just the kindness that our parents taught us. All generations want to be seen, valued, and heard.
Yeah.
All right. The way they're seen, valued, and heard is different, but all generations that I see, even the workplace today, they want to feel like they're appreciated, that they're valued, that they matter, and that they're seen.
So you and I, you're Generation X.
Yes.
And I'm X. And of course, I'm borderline boomer. I mean, I was a year too late, which is good because nobody can call me a boomer, right?
Yes.
But, do you see differences in work patterns?
Yes, I do. And so when you talk about you being a borderline boomer, sometimes it depends on how you define the generation.
Yeah.
But really it has to do your characteristics and how your disposition and how you act and deals with your formative years, what you went through, how society shaped you, even sometimes how your home life shaped you.
Right.
Because I am a Gen X, but my parents were older, so I was probably raised more like a baby boomer.
Yeah, I think I probably was too. you know, had a list of chores to do every day and, all those different things. But we also had different childhoods than kids today.
That's so true.
The 80s kids, I was in high school in the 80s and you were too. We didn't have a lot of the things that kids have today. It's mainly technology. We went outside and played. Friday nights were endless. Fun with your friends out and about, cruising the strip or what. If in Franklin, I'm sure y'all cruised up and down Main Street or something.
Or hung out at the Frosty Freeze.
I was gonna say that it's usually around a restaurant.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And Amy grew up in Todd County, and it was the Dairy Dip there. So. And seeing your friends and being a part of that, it's different now for kids today. They don't have that. They do, but not to the extent that we had it, where they have that one-on-one interaction, face-to-face every day with their friends and their peers. Yeah,
that connection. I think that's what you're speaking to. And we talk about even the similarities and difference of generations. Oftentimes, generations, when we are raising kids, we have this perception of I want it easier for my children, or I don't want my children to go through what I went through.
Right.
And so that's a similarity too in generations, because when you look at what we did, and even though
we got away with.
Yes. And even though we didn't mean to, we were with our children, we're like, well, I don't want you to have to do this, or I'm going to make it easier for you. And so good, bad, or indifferent, I think sometimes that's what different generations do to the generations behind them. But today's generation, as you said, they feel like they're connected through technology, connected through social media, but there's such a disconnect because they don't have that face-to-face connectivity. They don't have the riding around the restaurant and figuring things out together.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big difference in today's time as well.
So talking about social media, it's a blessing and a curse.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like a lot of times it's more of a curse than a blessing, but I think there is good in social media. But what kind of impact is that having, especially on the Alpha and Gen Z generation? You see it every day at WKU. I mean, nothing irritates me more than watching a student cross Chestnut Street and not look up.
Yes.
Because they got their face in the phone.
Yes.
And, we were always taught to look both ways before you cross the street.
And look both ways again.
Yeah.
Before you cross. But I do. I think they're so connected to their phones that they're disconnected from the world and the things that are happening around them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, also with their looking down at their phones, they have pods in. So even if you blew, they can't hear you because they're pods. They don't hear the noise. And so sometimes I think our social media or technology gives them a false safe space.
Yeah.
And so, which is concerning for me as an educator, it's concerning for me as an administrator on a college campus, because it provides a false safety for them. And it alleviates sometimes just the conversation to ask for help.
Yeah.
They are really struggling in some cases and don't really know how to ask for help because they have not always developed those communication skills that they need to get the help that they need.
Yeah, and I tell students that if I'm working a $20 million deal for a new economic development project, I'm not going to do it by text.
Yes.
I want to look you in the eye.
Yes.
And I may want to have coffee or have a meal with you and
yes.
Get to know you and build that relationship first before moving to the next step.
And I think that's what's missing. As you said, what can our generation do to help the next generation? I think that's what's missing is almost, as students will say, I hear students will tell me, Dr. Sells, that's old school. But sometimes we need to take them back to the old school. It's the specific things that you just talked about, sharing a meal together, looking at someone eye to eye, shaking their hand, speaking to them, greeting them. Oftentimes when I walk up and down the hill, as you said, I see students and they have their heads down or they have pods in their ear, and I may jump out in front of them and say, good morning. And students are like, are you speaking to me? Yeah. Good morning.
Well, and I do that because when I teach, I park at Alex Downing's house.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I walk across to go to the Chandler Hall. And I do this all the time. Every student I pass by, I'll say good morning, good afternoon, whatever, and to see how many actually look up and respond. And usually it's about 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So what can young people learn from the older generations?
I think, as we talked about, our parents' wisdom.
Yeah.
Some things we learn from experience,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those experiences were hard. Some of those experiences they were failures, as you said, setting us up for success. So what I think they need to do to glean from our wisdom is, again, spend time with us.
Yeah.
They can learn a lot. Students oftentimes come, and I have an open door policy as dean of students. I tell students, if you need to see me longer than 15 minutes, you need to make an appointment.
Right.
But if you just want to stop by, and I say, come by and check on me. I may be having a hard day as well. And so just to see them pop their heads in, I try to keep candy and snacks in my office.
Where's your office?
2122 DSG.
All right. Good to know.
I tell them I'm like a Walgreens. When you get off the elevator, I'm right on the corner. So you can find me. But students just to come in and watch me do my day-to-day operations. Sometimes when they say I need a job and they're looking, talk about economic development or resources internally for them. They said, Dr. Sells, I need a job, but I don't have these skills. And I'll say, well, do you have some time today? And they're like, yeah. And I may set them out in my front office, Jim, and have them answer the phones, you know, and have them take messages or do things like that. Because that's a skill maybe they haven't, especially as a freshman, if they've worked in like fast food restaurants, they haven't had desk time operations or work. And they first start out very intimidated. And then as time goes on, they feel more comfortable and they'll stop by. Do you need me today, Dr. Sells? And I'm like, yeah, I need you at this hour. Are you free? And they are able then to put that on their resume. Mm-hmm. And so just spending time watching our generation operate, and so I think that's key for our generations, our younger generations.
So what can older folks like us learn from the younger folks?
The same. Listen.
Yeah.
All right. And spend time with them and spend time with them in a compassionate, grace providing situation and circumstance. As I said, every generation, even as parents, we try to make it better for the generations who come after us. But sometimes older generations give the younger generations a hard time too.
Yeah.
I spend some time with some faculty staff and even some community people, and they talk about how terrible our students are. But I want us to start, older generations to start looking at too how resilient they are. Mm-hmm. How tough it is, again, to be a student or even to be a younger generation. Sometimes we say, oh, they have it made, but they are struggling in so many other areas.
Right.
I think a lot of our younger generations, many of them have everything they want, but they don't have what they need.
Yeah.
And that is correction. That is constructive criticism. That is letting them know, you may have fallen down, but I'm here to help pick you up. We can do this. And so I think it's a two-way street.
Yeah. So we're in a unique position here in Bowling Green, Warren County, South Central Kentucky, where we have a lot of different cultures as well. Mm-hmm. And while we have the same generations, how does that impact this whole dynamic with generations in the workplace when you add the cultural aspect to it?
I think it goes back to the same. You have to learn and have to spend time without judgment, because sometimes we only, especially with cultural differences, we only treat people based on what we've read or seen on TV,
right,
without actually getting to know the people. And so that's what I share, even as I do trainings with generational differences. Learn what the person needs before you give them what they haven't even asked for. Many times we and that's from a cultural standpoint too, we try to provide the answer when the question hadn't been asked yet.
Right. Try to answer the question before it's being asked.
Before it's being asked.
I got a bad habit of doing that sometimes too.
So we miss the mark.
Yeah.
And so spending time, again, with people, learning the differences. I love hanging out with my international students because many of the places and spaces that they have migrated from, I would probably never visit, but I'm able to sit with them in the international center or in the international offices and just talk to them. And I'll say, well, tell me about your mom or tell me about your grandmother, and just to see their resilience, you know, being that far away from home and striving and making it and working really hard.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you were doing your dissertation and research on the different generations, which one was the most interesting to you?
Probably the most, and that is so good. Let me see.
I mean, they all have their unique qualities and values.
I probably had more of an affinity to our generation, Generation X, just because, when you're researching it, information and then you start seeing yourself on the page, I'm like, oh my God, I do that. And I didn't realize I did.
That's me.
I didn't realize I did that. And then it also gives you an opportunity to correct some wrongs, in the research, and especially parenting. I always use parenting, for example, of some of the things that was okay for my parents to share with me in tough love. I have a 28-year-old son and a 23-year-old son and daughter, and they're totally different too, even that 5-year span. Their generation, Gen Y and then Gen Z, but just how I communicate with them. My parents communicated with me differently, and I have to communicate with them differently. So seeing myself on those pages in Gen X, it helped me, I think, be a better parent. And I think that age group is right now it still really is sort of kind of in the middle. And so Gen Xers really have to be flexible and adaptable. Many Gen Xers are now in leadership positions.
Right.
And so the choices that we make could either retain good talent, or we could push good talent out.
Yeah, and it could, obviously as being one, but that's where the term latchkey kids came from, was Generation X. We're the generation who has really we came from a period in time where there was no technology to where we are today. So we've seen all this stuff, and I see, sometimes on social media, I see these little quizzes like, take a point for each one of you, use the rotary phone, use the fax machine,
typewriter.
Typewriter, rode your bike to the store to pick up milk and bread for the family, things like that. But you just don't, those are things that a lot of people today have never done.
They haven't thought about it.
And when we think about it, 30-year-olds, don't know what a rotary phone is. I mean, they know, but they would. I saw a video once where they put a rotary phone there and they asked a kid to use it, and they didn't know what to do.
Vintage. Yeah, the rotary phones and typewriters, those are now in vintage shops. You know that, and I have had students, and I've asked about a typewriter, and they're like, a typewriter. They don't. And I've told students who are working on their dissertation now, I didn't experience that, but you think about generations before me who had to type out their dissertation and make the corrections with the correction tape and everything,
and didn't have Google
and didn't have Google or AI.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about AI for a second, because I think everybody's kind of grasping ChatGPT, and how is that having an impact, especially today in with the different generations, but also as an educator?
Well, it's here. Yeah. And so we can do one or two things. We can embrace it and use it for good, or we can shy away from it and it will run over us. And so I just think I think it would be wise, again, we talk about that wisdom word, for us to learn all we can. And even as you talk about social media, in its proper place, it's a good thing. And so we have to learn how to use it for good. We have to learn how to teach our students, as well as our faculty and staff in some cases, on how to utilize it to strengthen us and not weaken us.
Yeah, and it is here.
It's here.
It's not going away.
It's not going away. And I saw something on TV the other day, Jim. My husband was watching it, and it talked about, even the cell phones, the fear, initially of the cell phone, or the fear of the computer from the typewriter, or from the rotary phone to the cell phone, and how you had so many people like, I'm never going to get one, and who doesn't have a cell phone, or who doesn't have, a laptop or a computer if you can afford one.
I know when I was in the legislature, Jody Richards up until just 5 or 6 years ago, he was still using a flip phone, and he goes, "This technology's just a fad." but now he's got an iPhone, and he's embraced the technology, and he's a great example of someone. It took him a while to be. He wasn't an early adapter, that's for sure. But he eventually switched over. But I remember seeing him. Pop that phone open, and I'm like, wow, that is old school.
Yeah, it's old school, right? But it's here. AI is here, and again, just like you talk about the flip phone, we have to learn how to use it for our good. Yeah,
it's really interesting. We live in a unique time right now where we do have this because people live longer now.
Yes, sir.
You think about it, in the 80s, if you knew a 70s, even when we were teenagers, a 50-year-old looked old.
Yes.
50-year-olds today look like they're 30, right?
Yeah, like us.
That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
And they work longer, too.
Too, so you have that. You have all those different generations in the workplace, or, at church or wherever.
Yes.
And, it's important for people to get to know each other and know a little bit about their background and how they came up and what makes them tick, because I think younger people, they adapt really well. And I think a lot of older people do too, but they just adapt differently.
And I think that's key.
And I always think that older people, for example, are more linear in how they do things. They check the boxes. They want to go down the list of and making sure they're doing everything properly. And today, you know, it's more flexible, and we're seeing that in the workplace now with flexible hours. You know, people work differently. You can work remotely. You don't have to show up every day. And one of the things I talk about is it's not about how many, you know, you got to work 40 hours a week. That's the older generation, right? Now it's about productivity. And I think getting generations to understand that difference has been huge in the workplace.
And I think it's difficult too, especially for the older generation, because it's we have defined how work should be and how work looks. You know, and so for our younger generation, they is just what you said. Why do I have to work 40 hours a week if I can get it done in 30? I mean, you know, or if I have an easier way. And so we have to be flexible, and we can learn from one another in reference to that. And I do think you're right. It's about productivity now. And then even with the younger generation, I'm seeing, especially at Western Kentucky University, and even with my own children, they can help us too, not to put so much pressure on ourselves. You know, because sometimes we think our generation can be a generation who has to be perfect. You know, everything. If you haven't accomplished it by this date, then we may see ourselves as failures. Or if you're not doing this at your age, or if you don't have, you know, a wife or a husband and 2 children and a house and a picket fence, then you're a failure. And so sometimes that can be so much pressure, mentally, emotionally, you know, financially, you know, there can be so much pressure. And our younger generation they pretty much roll with the punches. In some respects, it's like, you know, I'm good.
I tell them, I say, I don't care how you get it done, as long as it's you get it in on time. I don't care where you do it, when you do it, as long as it's legal and ethical.
Yes. No jail, no hell is what I say.
Right. You know, make sure it's legal and ethical. Be a good citizen, and you know, right? What you don't do anything that would make your grandmother mad.
Yes. But even where you raised, Jim, when you know there were certain things you had to do a certain way, like take out the trash. It was, you know, with our children, like as long as you get it taken out before I get home, you know, it wasn't like you have to take it out at a certain time or do it. And again, it's just the difference.
I had to vacuum on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. There was no getting around to it. I had to vacuum the house every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You know, and then take out the garbage Tuesday, Thursday. You know, I had a list.
Schedule.
It was hung up on the refrigerator.
And as you said, our younger generation is just like, as long as the trash is taken out, or why are you taking out the trash? Because it's not as full as it needs to be. I'll take it out when it hits here. So it's just a different way of looking at things.
And then that builds habits, and you know, it takes 67 days to build a habit or something like that. And I think that's something that, you know, people need to get used to, is building those habits, you know, whether it's, you know, scheduling. And that's one of the, especially with the younger folks, I'm like, you know, use that calendar on your phone and schedule. You know, it can be flexible. You can move it an hour later or an hour earlier, you know, depending on your day. But at least you know it's there, and you know what task you need to get completed. That's the old school me coming out going, I need to know where I'm going to be and what I'm doing at all times.
Well, it provides purpose too. It's not everything for each generation is not necessarily bad.
Right.
I think it's just the way we communicate it. I think it's, as you said, the way whatever works for you. My list might not look like your list, but I think we do need a list. You know, your list may be in text. My list may be, because I like to write things out and check it off. But I think there are some foundational things that still need to remain, but you make it fit who you are and what your need is.
There's only 168 hours in a week, so make the most of it.
Make the most of it, and don't waste your time. And I often tell students, don't waste your thought processes either. You know, sometimes it's that mental and emotional that I see with our students that concerns me, because they do put so much pressure, different pressure that you and I had, but a lot of pressure that they struggle with. And so if they had that list that will provide purpose, provide empowerment, and even direction that may assist as well.
So anything that I left out that I didn't ask?
No, I think you covered it well. Again, I appreciate you inviting me and letting me spend this time with you.
Well, I appreciate you coming and spending time with us, and this has been a great conversation. I love hearing about the different generations, because there is so much to learn from each other, and we can all learn from each other regardless of age.
What's your favorite? Let me ask you.
Well, it's Gen X. I mean, you know,
the best.
I just, you know, the older I get, the more I reflect. You know, I still listen to 80s music all the time, and because it was the best music of all time.
Yeah, and it still is because they still use it. They just remix it.
They do. Exactly right.
Nothing new under the sun.
And, and one of the things that gives me great joy is the neighborhood I live in. I see kids out and about. We got a lot of kids in our neighborhood, and that reminds me of that era where, kids got outside and played and rode their bikes and, hung out with friends. And occasionally they get in trouble, but for the most part, they're just having fun and being with their buddies, and that's great. And, building those relationships. I met with a young man recently. He called me, and he just graduated college out in St. Louis, but he's from this area. And he knows I know a lot of people, and he's like, how do I build relationships? And I'm like, well, when you meet someone, you have that initial meeting, follow up with them later, send them a note, shoot them an email, call them, say, let's get together for coffee. It's about relationship building. All things are built on relationships. That's sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know.
That's right.
Right.
And that's true for every generation.
Yeah.
That is true for every generation. Yeah, it's about relationships.
It is. And so, he's like, well, I never thought of it that way. I was like, yeah, if you're looking to build a book of business, get that person's name and contact and stay in touch with them, because eventually someday they may need you for whatever product or service you're providing. And he's like, you see the lights go on, and I think it's about it. I read an author once. He said, I don't go out networking, I build a network.
I love it.
And that's what everybody needs to do, because those are the people that will become your friends, and people you can count on when you get into certain situations, good and bad. And that's what life's all about.
And I think it's key, and the example that you just gave, that the fact that you shared, because many times older generations just assume the younger generations know, or they should know.
Yeah.
And so they don't take the time to teach. And so we can't assume that they know. And so even if they do, tell them and tell them again, just in case they forgot.
Yeah.
Because the more things change, the more they stay the same. And all of us need someone to assist us in this thing called life.
Yeah, nobody succeeds by themselves.
Nobody.
Dr. Sales, thanks for being on the DeCesare Group Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again to Dr. Martha Sales, Dean of Students and Vice President of Student Experience at WKU, for joining us this week on the DeCesare Group Podcast. And thank you for checking us out. If you like what you hear, please share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a review and share your feedback with us as well. You can also follow the DeCesare Group across all of our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. You can even subscribe to our weekly newsletter, Soki Economic Development and Business News, by going to our website, DeCesareGroup.com. The DeCesare Group Podcast is produced by the DeCesare Group, a public relations and consulting firm based in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Our engineer and dean of podcasting is Justin DeCesare, with content contributions from Brooke Mattingly. The DeCesare Group Podcast is researched by Amy DeCesare. I'm Jim DeCesare, inviting you to join us again next time for the DeCesare Group Podcast.